Boa noite a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone. We now begin our last activity from the first Forum SPCine. After all the panels, we believe that it is necessary for us to give some space to an entity that is so important in our management, which is the Consultative Committee. Over 29 entities participating, so I'd like to call Mariana Souza from APRO, Georgia Costa Araújo representing ABRAVE, and Rodrigo Antonio representing APAN. The idea of this closing panel is to bring our guests to talk about the global concept, to think global and act local. So we have APRO and ABRAVE in a more international concept, and APAN bringing the local concept. So we'd like to invite Mariana to begin, and I will be here with you. Well, good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank you for the invitation from Vivi, Iso, Luis. Thank you very much, everyone. We like SPCine and Film Commission very much, and we see how after so many years how it has been growing and becoming more and more relevant for the audiovisual industry in the city of São Paulo. For those who don't know, APRO is the audiovisual Brazilian production company. We complete 50 years of existence. We started with the DNA for advertisement productions, despite us dealing with other sectors as well, and with dealing with the advertising part of audiovisual. And talking about the international aspect, I think we have three great pillars within APRO. The first one for training in our companies, and this branch towards the international part that happens since 2005, and not less important, we act in interest of our associates and all the dealings with the stakeholders in the market. We acted heavily in the recovery activities, all the dealings in Brasilia with the legislative and executive powers. But we're here to talk about the international part of things. I'm very happy. I'm looking at the last few years. In 2019, our production companies yielded almost $42 million. In 2020, they yielded 27.5, and 2022 was 27.3 million. I think it is with great optimism that we speak here today. We are returning to our normal rhythm. At the end of last year, we had a boom. The streaming was going strong. We couldn't find a cable to rent. Such was the movement in the market at that time. So added to this in the international aspect, which is what I'm going to talk about, we have all this diversity. São Paulo overall has a cultural calderon, and it's very rich when we sell our city internationally as a production hub, not mentioning the structure that we have in São Paulo. And also added to this, we have the exchange rate, which is extremely favorable for these projects. A dollar at 5.17 reais, euro almost 6 reais. So there is an attraction here in this aspect, and several factors put us ahead of the competition. And with the news that we had yesterday about the cash rebate that went from 10 to 40 million, we are even more happy. So all of these initiatives come to add to our efforts and make the city more attractive to the international market. So as a member of the consulting committee, we have to work to get rid of some of the bureaucracy that we run to from time to time, and the operational day-to-day status. And I understand that an operation that involves government entities is more bureaucratic and takes more time. But I think that our mission is to make this more agile, so that we can attend to this demand that is growing constantly. So we have a good problem in our hands, a possibility of our technicians to learn and enhance the skills. So if I would have to leave a message for the next years, it would be less bureaucracy. Perhaps we can achieve that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mariana. I would like to pass the floor to Rodrigo now to give us an overview of APAN. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here. APAN is from the Black Audiovisual. We have been talking about the strategy. It's the Association of Black Audiovisual Professionals. And I would like to begin by making a reflection showing how APAN is positioning itself in relation to the market, and what are the sensitive points of the market in terms of policies through the platforms that we are managing, in terms of training, market, and dissemination. And I'm going to explain why we are here and why we look at the idea of diversity, which was the focus in our forum, the perspective of the inequality of access, from a perspective of training, professional training. And this is a speech that was published in a business magazine in Brazil that was entitled "The Boom of Streamings. The Moment is Good for the Audiovisual in Brazil." It's the pluralization of policies, brings intense dispute to the platforms and production companies, and looks for local content. Everyone is struggling for market share because Brazil is the main market for the English language. So the investment is incredible. We predict that several series will be produced. I believe that we won't have a multiplicity of small production companies for using public incentives. Producing for large players demands operational and cash flow of at least 6 million, we will have at most 10 production companies, and our goal is to be amongst them. This is from a large production company in Brazil that goes on the reverse flow of what we are looking for, and in the sense that when we think about diversity, we must understand this to build the audiovisual market in Brazil. And this is for us to begin to think about within this inequality and the inequality, and so that we can build with these social players a commitment. And this commitment with equity is subject for SPCine, and we must understand that these stories arise from very specific places that also are destinated to different entities, because audiovisual is a narrative, and we're talking about the possibility of coexistence.
We're talking about the possibility of coexisting to different business models and the possibility of the existence of models of action which are distinct and complement themselves at the same time. In order to do it, we need first to take on this compromise together with those players that think differently, based on this motto of being more. What are we doing when we think about it? When we say that there's a boom in the market, sometimes we don't stop and see that this discourse of market unit, it can be not only silencing, oppressing, but also creates a diversity based on idea of product. And an idea of product, as all products, we have to produce and negotiate with the different agents, different channels, distributors, and streaming platforms. That has to do with different agents from different regions of Brazil. With this, PAM has three questions on which we base our services. First of all, to have a co-responsibility process for the democratization of the sector on the point of view of race and gender. This is a commitment that we build together, a positioning that goes against the top ones that are going to give the final word, especially in the time that we are warming up this sector. What is the political and economic commitment that we have to build together so that we will not activate logics of the market based on the 80s and 90s, instead of a centralized system that we're not going to have anymore. We're here to have it done and not being to make it impossible to take place. Today, we saw a strengthening of networks, the understanding of the potential of black narratives and the possibilities to be self-referenced as black and Amazonian filmmakers. And in this sense, I believe that in spite of this statement, we are going to continue existing so that this reality of exclusivity of thinking of the Brazilian audiovisual is not reproduced. PAM, as well as other associations, that deal with territorial protection, gender, and race, are building our narrative so that we can confront a project of nation that continues to be based and refigured according to a perspective to understand this market, focused on self-centered thinking, Brazil, which is centered in the southeastern region of Brazil. Here in Brazil, black filmmakers that ultimately were the only ones in their space of work. Decentralization means when we create our regional councils, when we try to understand where these black filmmakers were, we have to understand that being a black filmmaker would go different ways, like film clubs and also university screenings. In other words, there is construction when we talk about the self-referencing. This has to do with the 4 points: visibility, responsibility, representation, access, and appropriation, because it's not only to have access, it's not only to include black professionals in the market. We have to get hold of these technologies and also to have our own cinema language, an audiovisual language, which has a completely different view of the Brazilian reality. And that's what they say, to be our own polygons. We have to relate to the languages of the other, languages that were built based on domination, so that later we can put this out by giving the correct answer. For this, we need to go through a co-responsibility process. How to get to build this new Brazilian market, recognizing the policy of decentralization that took place last decade, so that the idea of 10 production companies dominating Brazil be not the reality. There are things that we deconstruct and others we construct. We believe in the idea of demolition, not only deconstruction. And together with the present identities, it's important that we have a mobilization in incentives so that together we can face those issues of racial inequality, because we cannot look at the market and other areas when we think of acting within the process of an activism. We have to make decisions based on education. This is used in certain spaces of negotiation as if we are coming from an academy, or rather other areas. We have to understand that those gaps are built because it is a place where people are left out, either because of our existence or our narratives. This is not what we want to build upon. He's building not only a political action, which is very assertive with the dialogue with the government, but also the strengthening of this professional network. We have 3 platforms. Streaming, we have Haya, which is our agency to include black talents, including gender and territorial protection, not only including these people, but to see how these people are going to remain in the market. Also, specific access of the market that do not have black professionals. When we create those platforms, we have to see that we do not work for free. These constructions and reflection around the existence of this market is not done by recognition. This is done through a permanent tension. So for this, we need that together with people, whether identities of those who have access to those funds, whatever dimension they are, we have to understand that we need to build an equity action together, not only including black people in the market, but also to talk about business plans. And for this, my last point is the idea of being able to contribute to the ecosystem of strengthened political policies in which audiovisual be regulated according to the needs of several segments in the industry. It is by building a market which may be the reference in terms of race, gender, and territorial protection. This is a commitment not only of BUM, but also other associations. And in this sense, we want to strengthen those narratives that went through a professionalization process in the past decade, but today are facing an under-hiring and reducing of the activities within the self-centering of the industry in the southeastern part of the country. That's why we are here in this forum, or either in other areas where we know that the economy is stronger. We have to understand that this commitment is daily, and we have to look at the growth of our entities or productions with the political commitment, which should be constant and not going backwards as it happened in the past decades. That's why we're here as a PUM to tension the spaces and building in this network of professionals who are here with us today. Thank you very much, Rodrigo. Now I'd like to pass the floor to Georgia, representing ABRAVE. ABRAVE is a national association of production companies. We hold hundreds of companies which are associate companies, companies that work with television and filmmaking. Well, a little bit about our topic of this table, which is global advances. What it means, this local vision. We understand how important it is, this relationship with the international market. And with a PUM, we also understood the importance of a better distribution, including different voices in this dialogue. This is part of our cultural cauldron for all areas, specifically for the audiovisual industry. I was just thinking about this term, glocal, which is local relating to the global world. And this is an insight I'd like to share with you, a perception that I have had with the conversations between us producers. We came to know that there is something happening which is very subtle. It is hard to quantify. It's difficult to have the figures to give out to you. This is a wave, or a perception of a wave, that our production, audiovisual production, is somehow bursting this bubble of exclusive interests of Brazil. This means perhaps something relevant for Brazilian audiovisual market. I'm going to elaborate a little bit more. everyone who works with a certain channel, being paid TV or whatever, and we have been producing for TV for decades. They all know that there was an interest from the part of the channels in a production that would dialogue with Brazilian audience. Everybody knows that Brazilian population is gigantic. It is sufficient to support this industry. If it is a production which is not geared for the masses, we also have all niches of interest. Producing in Brazil for Brazilians, that's always been our North Star. And this gets guided our path towards getting to everyone. Well, Brazil is self-sufficient, especially as a market. We know that we have a language which is unique, it is difficult. We don't have a global reach, and something is happening. We have noticed, and I was talking to a journalist yesterday who asked me, well, I heard that now perhaps the channels and platforms are very interested in producing there in Brazil works for the whole world. Well, I've never had such commission. I've never seen that. But one thing is for sure, and I have spoken to producers from our network, and I noticed that the more our works are able to have a good dialogue here in Brazil, this goes beyond our frontiers. It's not only about winning over international markets. We're talking more than that. Perhaps now we came to realize our country as a cultural cauldron, and being able, while creators and filmmakers, to look at this population and relate to them, perhaps we are somehow bringing something very original to the world. It's as if Brazil, in fact, now could enjoy their vocation of an immense territory that it is, not only immense, but also diverse. And this efficiency, if you will, of multiple dialogues would bring something really original and unique. And perhaps the world is curious to know what we have to bring. There are very interesting stories that we have to offer. Now we see our stories going beyond our frontiers. In the past, we had an industry where all distribution circuits had been done to distribute one single type of cinematography. Today, we see a different reality. We have in the roster of audiovisual production different facets, perhaps 10 major production companies producing those works. Perhaps this will become something bigger and a larger scale. But at the same time, we have a diverse production of producers that produce local content. We have never had such large production coming from an independent group of filmmakers, and then we have small and then medium producers, and also those who are very big, but they are individual voices that become producers of content. And of course this makes it bigger and bigger the market that we have. When we talk about local, we have to see that we see São Paulo as a representation of Brazil as a whole. Perhaps São Paulo would be the ideal place to see stories full of different interests. And from São Paulo, I believe, we are able to tell the stories that would go beyond borders, looking local and reaching global.
Thank you very much for your point of view. The consultative committee is an important entity to maintain dialogue. I would like to begin our wrap-up. Thank you very much for your participation.
Bom, vou chamar aqui.
I would like to call two people to the stage to begin our wrap-up of the day and of the forum, bringing an assessment of what has been discussed here. Flavia, Director of Investments and Strategic Partnership, and Marcelo, Innovation Manager and Policies of Audiovisual. Now it's with you. Thank you very much, everyone. Good evening, everyone. As Vitor mentioned, my name is Flavia. I'm a white female with short hair, black shirts, and I'm wearing a scarf. I'm very glad to be here. I have been here all 3 days, and the program, I'm in SPCine for 6 years, so having a forum with this level of debate in which we are able to retell our stories and the future that we want to build ahead of us is something that makes me very happy to be able to share this between different points of view so that we can have a proposed agenda for the future. And talking a little bit about figures, we had over 1,000 people that attended in person during our program of these 3 days. We were in doubt with organizing if we would have it virtual or on-site. We opted for hybrid format. It's very good to count with you all here because we know that this is in person is extremely important. And in the virtual environment, we had over 2,000 visualizations of our program. I think this is going to grow. We have a lot of material for consulting, and this was only possible due to several efforts that were made collectively, but I wanted to highlight some specific persons here. I would like to thank Vitor Hugo, which is our coordinator for the observatory. It was hard work to structure this event, and together with his right arm, which is the organizer of this event, which is Ana Maria Beatriz, our assessor for the laboratory, and obviously all the crew from SPCine, highlighting our directors and who are willing to battle for the ideas that the team brings up. We wouldn't be able to follow ahead. So thank you very much, Luiz, Yara, for all your effort for making this happen. And as I mentioned, I'm at Spcine for 6 years. I have a current team that is extremely engaged, and without them, nothing would work. But we have had many people that came through and shared with us their points of view and our success. So all of this is a collective construction. Everyone that was a part of this story is very happy to be able to share this with all of you. And lastly, I'd like to thank the people from the Handicap Secretary and also the Brazilian Sign Language interpreters, and also with the transmission for the YouTube channel, and also for the municipal secretary that always follows us and battles together with us and is part of our conquers, and CCSP, the Centro Cultural São Paulo, that gave us this wonderful space to be able to share our ideas. It's so many people that we have to try and thank everyone. Well, I think with the first forum we have had some great achievements, such as the announcement of the second version of cash rebate program, which will be in partnership with the state government and the city hall. And for a long time we have been trying to consolidate this policy to make it a perpetuous policy. So the second version makes us have more chances of making this happen. And also the Film Commission, and that is something that is extremely important to us as well. And I was very happy when the mayor signed the decree, and to be able to have the city with a process that is feasible in terms of productions, audiovisual productions. We have to, as was mentioned in the Films Commission panel, we have to work collectively so that we can arrange for regulation, and we will follow on with this filming in places in São Paulo that needed this regulation. And I'm also very glad with the publication of our booklet with the balance of the history of SPCine, taking the main data which was done by the observatory. We were able to compile all the data from each of the sectors of SPCine and leave this for posterity, and to be able to have this data accessible as well. And the update of the observatory webpage with new studies, things that are coming soon. We have mentioned this to several people. This will be published next week, which is the Olsberg SPI Consulting Company, and for the city of São Paulo. This will be in our observatory webpage, and many things that are still to come. And I'm very thrilled to be able to share this with you all, these expectations that we have. Now, going to the topic of building the agendas. This is the purpose of this forum, was to look at who we are and what we have to become in the future. We passed a long time in isolation, and now we have to look at how we can unite and have collective approaches to the future. We're going to share some of the agenda points that came from each one of the panels. So I'm going to talk about the areas of which I am responsible, and Marcelo is going to talk about his area. And at the end of the month, we are going to publish this consolidated in a document so that we can make use, and advance with these topics. So the first panel that we had about collection and distribution of data on the audiovisual industry, we were able to sum up some necessary points. And the first one is the sharing of knowledge about data production amongst institutions. We have spent these days together with the film commissions of Buenos Aires and the City of Mexico, and we have data, they have their own data, but what is the methodology? Let us share this kind of methodology to try and build common data so that we can use them as to develop policies that make sense. And besides this, the sharing of good practices implemented in each institution that deals with the institutions such as Data Lab, Observatory from Data Lab, and Itaú Cultural Observatory, some institutions that deal with this sharing with these practices that have been implemented, and in investment for it is necessary to be made. This demand of the public entities about the investments. This was a point that Leonardo, that represents IBGE, opened up to us, that the data are not produced in the IBGE unless the industry requests this from them. So we have to put some pressure and to get the data that is necessary. And lastly, from these mapping, how much we can share the infrastructure that are dedicated or that are possible to be used in the audiovisual industry, so that the institutions that have no access to this infrastructure are able to benefit from this. So these were the points of the first panel. The second panel was with the international theme, which was for international investments in international productions, and also the cash rebate from 2022. As Rio mentioned today, it's a kind of policy that we want to see worldwide, and how important specifically for São Paulo was able to advance in a point that we wanted a lot, which is the partnership between City Hall and the state government. And also it was mentioned the decree of shooting in exclusively residential areas. So we can't attract productions without making the city available for them to shoot their productions. And this decree was a great indicator from the City Hall that the city of São Paulo wants to be receptive to the audiovisual. A point that permeated all the panels, and Marcelo is going to talk about, is the issue of training and formation, professional training. And we know that this professional training, the need for it is eternal. We also always have to advance, and specifically now we find a bottleneck in several places of the world, not only here in São Paulo. and how much we actually have to look at our audiovisual industry to have collective partnerships for professional training. It's no use doing this alone. We have to do this collectively. We have to look at this to ensure that we have technicians. The technicians are the most required ones that we need, and that we have creative people that have more capacity, as Apan mentioned, to format businesses to show our narratives in Brazil. And the third panel is still in my area. The third one was the attraction of production and investments.
Sejam políticas efetivamente de Estado.
Sorry, we had a problem in the booth. And the audiovisual industry, as an industry, needs a predictability. They have to have the knowledge and know that that kind of resource will be available in the process of organizing and their production. And we have to make the effort to have a framework to ensure all of this. Well, a second point that was mentioned was about how the infrastructure is essential to ensure investment and attract more investment. There's no use giving money to a production without an infrastructure. So this is one of the pillars that was mentioned as well. And well, about the institutional security that goes into the legal framework that will give perpetuity to our public policy, and also the qualification and training to attend this demand that we have here in Brazil. Good evening, everyone. My name is Marcelo Rocha. That is my description is I am a black male, black t-shirt and jeans. Before going into the themes that were raised in each one of the panels, I think it's important to mention things that were reoccurring in all the panels, and also to think about policies for the audiovisual industry. The first one is the importance of data so that the policies can be formulated. The work that we have doing of collecting and gathering data and organizing this data so that the industry has access to it is not done alone, and the whole industry has to participate in collecting data, so that the productions, the associations, and the institutions have to be able to have detailed information and data to understand the gaps in the industry and the things that can be done to develop the industry so that we can contribute and have policies to bring more advancements to this industry.
We need to think about diversity, capacity building, inclusion. I believe these are very important issues. And the other topic that was present in all panels was diversity in the audiovisual system. It is something expensive for SPCine. Flavia has been 6 years at SPCine and myself 1 year. We both notice how we have been pioneers in the audiovisual sectors. We have been enhancing our diversity policy. It's impossible to talk about anything at SPCine that does not consider this. We can talk about biddings, the films that we hire, that we exhibit in our streaming platform. In other words, all the body of professionals that make up SPCine include diversity. It is something that we cherish at SPCine. At certain moments, we don't even have to mention diversity, because when we think about the bidding terms, when we think about a panel, when we think about a master class or a training course, all this will always take into consideration sexual orientation, accessibility, and most importantly, diversity. We are always looking to enhance processes. At every action we develop, we see where to get it right and where to get it better. And now, for the next panels that we had, now we go to the challenges of audiovisual, the challenges for diversity promotion. This panel, we discussed this issue. We were able to conduct an activity that put in the same dialogue 2 events that were present in the sector, which was the feature film and short film festivals, and also a fringe festival that takes place in the outskirts of the city of São Paulo, and Fiambi, which is the Black Movie Festival, which has been active for a longer period of time. We were able to put these people around the same table to discuss the advancement of the diversity in those festivals and the events that take place in São Paulo. And the issues discussed was investments to ensure a periodical flow of events. In this respect, SBC has ensured this to happen. This semester, we had some events thinking about new methodologies so that we could ensure this action, but always having in mind there's a double track. It is important that festivals always enhance, including new demands that we see year by year. Pandemic was a very important time to think about all these problems. If one side it was very bad because we were not able to get together, on the other hand, we enhanced our technologies, and by doing this, we put people together, people who were far apart. So we see the number of participants in other events. People from other states who were not able to be here in São Paulo were able to take part. They are local events, but they expand to include other participants. Other topics was the exchange between festivals so that they can share good practices. So to think about this dialogue between organizers and festivals to promote diversity, to expand their actions and be able to take to cities' outskirts all these events and take all these events to an audience that cannot go to the city center. The other issue was the dissemination of festivals and events for larger audiences. I believe we have carried out important actions in this respect. And this is one of our goals, is to take festivals to the outskirts of the city by doing fringe festivals and get away from this centralized actions that we see happening downtown in the cities. The panel 5, which was the audience engagement for Brazilian audiovisual topics like children's audience engagement, also accessible spaces that would welcome several different kinds of audience to raise passion for Brazilian audition and also help people to put this all together. These tables discussed topics that we have been focusing on. And thinking about this children's audience engagement, we see that besides the theaters here, besides SPC's theaters, we have seen this in the outskirts of the city. We are promoting the possibility of accessing cultural events by children who live in the outskirts, and this fosters the interest on the audiovisual and access of these people to culture, accessible spaces, to use entertainment as an aid to professional training. We have a specific SPCine professional training, which intends to foster debate from audiovisual by having film clubs in the outskirts of the city, in places where we do not have theaters from SPCine. And by doing this, we're going to give them access to culture, and we discuss important topics after showing those movies. So we are putting together entertainment and movies, but also promoting a more solid debate. Panel number 6, which is the interpersonal relationship. We saw issues like professional trainings and equality within diversity. Diversity has to be a transversal pillar in education. This is something we have been implementing and also seeking a dialogue with the sector so that this diversity be more and more present in education. As a consequence, this would reflect in the market. We've been discussing the absence of diversity in the audiovisual sector, the education focusing on diversity, with the interest from trans people, black people, and women who are going to give us new readings, interpretations about the world, a new social reality, and to put it all in a more systematic way in our productions.
Another issue, which is the professional training that are already in the market. This is a great gap in something that we discuss a lot at SPCine with the film commission that has been following with the production companies to have skilled laborers. And we also have been moving as to offer courses in the technical areas. We spent a week in a meeting to think about these courses, which would be the more relevant and interesting courses according to the data that we have been collecting. So we are in synchronicity with what has been put during these days in the forum, and we have been delivering access and there's also XR that we had an experience, which is the issue of innovation, thinking about games and extended reality. We have the first cycle of games incubator, which is an innovative action that we had, and we have been thinking about and expanding this to other applications. This is what we are planning, and this communicates with the demand and thinking about innovation in the audiovisual industry, walking hand in hand. And now back to Flavia, which is table 8 about the social impacts of film. I'm going to talk about film commission, my trajectory at SPCine. It was very good to be able to have international participants, Saul from Buenos Aires, Guillermo from the city of Mexico, and also Georgia, which is a great partner of ours for authorizing shootings. This was essential for this to take place. And lastly, Gustavo, the mayor of Ilhabela, we have this project of having a film commission at Ilhabela. Well, the points that we have from this table, from this panel, is that the relevance of having an interaction that is more perpetuous, such as the film commission. So spending these 3 days with Guilherme, Sol, and people from Belo Horizonte, the film commission also appeared here. This is a great exchange of ideas and experiences so that we are able to advance in our policies and have these collective constructions. Another point is how important it is to stimulate film commissions, of how much the audiovisual industry is strategic, and also the inclusion of other cultural points of view. In terms of film commission, from the film commissions be revised to ensure the maximum possible so that they can answer we have to take care of this. And also the facility of moving the audiovisual industry and so that it is not so slow that as other industries have in installing itself in the territory. So the audiovisual industry is able to reach a spot, bringing changes, great investments locally, create jobs without taking too long to happen. So this is strategic for us to talk about. And lastly, the soft power and the self-esteem that this generates on the population when there is a shooting going on in these locations. So we have to talk more about this so that the other technicians, politicians, and managers of public policies know how essential it is to have film commissions to handle all the needs and necessities that are generated by a audiovisual production. With this, we end the points from the panels, and Marcelo was talking about thanking the translation and everyone in the technical area that are making this event possible, that are happening, and obviously the institutions that are part of our consultative committee that had here the ability to speak globally and locally. So I think that's it. I would also like to thank this forum, the organization of the observatory. This is a process that was built by SPCine in all of the areas, training, film commission. This process is built during our day-to-day activities, the demands that arise, and thinking about ways to make this work more effective and ensure a better infrastructure here in São Paulo, and trying to influence this development nationwide. So I would like to thank everyone that works with us on a daily basis, and thank those who have been here and who followed from home. The physical forum ends here, but we are always open and continuing to improve the policies for the audiovisual industry in São Paulo. Thank you. So to wrap up this forum, I would like to thank everyone at SPCine. It was incredible to be able to have an event such as this, and also reinforce what has been said by Flávia and Marcelo, that this is an open forum, and thank the audience here, the audience at home, and we will see you on the next SPCine forum. Thank you very much, and good evening.
Atenção, equipe da SPCine, favor comparecer ao palco para a foto. Obrigado.